I need to tell someone about this. I've been carried around for 3 weeks now, and it's eating at me. Maybe if I say it out loud, maybe if I get it out there, it'll stop feeling so real. My name's Marcus, I'm 28, and I work downtown doing IT support for a mid-sized accounting firm. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. The thing is, I'm one of those people who actually likes the morning commute. I know that sounds crazy, but there's something peaceful about that first train of the day, the 6:15 a.m. red line heading into the city. It's usually pretty empty, just a handful of early risers like myself, and there's this quiet energy to it. People are still half asleep, scrolling their phones, sipping coffee. No one talks much. It's predictable. Well, it was predictable until 3 weeks ago when I saw the cleaner. And now I can't stop thinking about what he was mopping away. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I remember because I just got my pumpkin spice latte. Yeah, I'm that guy, and I was feeling pretty good about life. The platform was nearly deserted. Just me and maybe 4 other people waiting for the 6:15. When the train pulled up, I grabbed my usual spot in the second car. 3rd row back, window seat on the left side. Same routine I'd followed for 2 years. That's when I first noticed him. He was standing near the doors, maybe 10 feet away from me, mopping the floor. Just a regular maintenance guy. Navy blue coveralls, white baseball cap pulled low, generic cleaning cart with wheels that squeaked slightly when he moved. Nothing unusual about that, right? Trains get cleaned. It's normal. But there was something about the way he was working that caught my attention. Most janitors, they move with purpose. They've got a system. Start at one end, work methodically to the other, maybe chat with passengers or at least acknowledge them. This guy, he was just focused on this one spot on the floor, maybe 2 feet square, right between the doors and the first row of seats. I watched him for a few minutes as we pulled out of the station. The mop went up and down, side to side, in these slow, deliberate circles. The bucket sat next to him, industrial gray plastic. But I noticed something weird. The water never sloshed when the train moved, and when he lifted the mop out, I couldn't see any water dripping from it. Not a drop. I figured maybe it was one of those microfiber things, or he was using some kind of dry cleaning solution. I went back to my phone, scrolling through emails, getting ready for another thrilling day of explaining to middle-aged accountants why their password can't be password 123. Next stop was Riverside. A few people got on. A woman in scrubs, probably heading to the hospital, and a guy in a suit carrying a coffee that smelled way better than mine. They walked past the cleaner without so much as a glance. Normal commuter behavior. We're all experts at ignoring each other on public transport. But the cleaner, he was still working on that same spot. I looked up from my phone and watched him. Same slow, methodical circles. Same focused attention on those 2 square feet of floor. The mop never seemed to pick up any dirt, and that patch of floor, it stayed wet. Not soaking wet, just that subtle shine you get when something's been freshly mopped. Stop after stop, it was the same thing. Oak Street. 3 more passengers, no one acknowledging the cleaner. Cedar Avenue. A teenager with headphones, an elderly man with a newspaper. They all walked right past him like he wasn't even there. And he never looked up, never paused, just kept mopping that same goddamn spot. By the time we hit downtown West, I was starting to feel uneasy. Not scared exactly, just off. Like when you hear a song, but can't quite place where you know it from, or when someone's staring at you, but every time you turn around, they're looking away. I decided to switch seats. Told myself I needed to stretch my legs. But really, I just want to get away from whatever weird energy was happening near those doors. I moved 3 rows back, diagonal across the aisle. Better view of the whole car, and far enough away that I wouldn't have to watch the repetitive mopping. Except when I looked up again, the cleaner had moved too. He was now working on a spot right next to my new seat. Same position relative to where I was sitting. Same slow, methodical circles. Same wet patch that never dried and never seemed to get any cleaner. My heart started beating a little faster. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he'd finished that first spot, though I could have sworn it was still wet, and moved on to the next section. That's what cleaners do, right? They work their way through the car systematically. But when I looked back to where he'd been before, that original spot was still there. Still wet. Still shining under the fluorescent lights. At Merchants Plaza, I watched carefully as new passengers boarded. A businessman brushed right past the cleaner, close enough that he should have had to step around the cart or say, "Excuse me." But he just walked through the space like nothing was there. That's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. I couldn't hear the mop anymore. I'd been so focused on watching the cleaner that I hadn't noticed the absence of sound. No squeaking cartwheels. No splash of water. No scraping of the mop against the floor. Just silence. But I could still see him. Clear as day. Navy coveralls. White cap. Slow circles with the mop. I pulled out my earbuds, thinking maybe I'd been listening to music without realizing it. But no, my phone was on silent. I could hear everything else perfectly fine. The rumble of the train on the tracks, the rustle of newspapers, the woman in scrubs coughing softly, all the normal sounds of a Tuesday morning commute. Everything except the cleaner. I wanted to get up and walk over to him. Maybe ask him a question just to confirm he was real. But something stopped me. Some primal instinct that said, don't draw attention to yourself. Don't let him know you can see him. Because even though he never looked up, never acknowledged any of the passengers, I was starting to get the feeling that he knew I was watching, that he'd moved closer to me on purpose. My stop was coming up, Financial District, where I'd been getting off every weekday for 2 years. I gathered my stuff early, stood up when we were still a few blocks away, and made my way toward the doors on the opposite end of the car, as far away from the cleaner as I could get. But as we slowed down approaching the platform, I couldn't help myself. I looked back one more time. The car had filled up since downtown West. Maybe 20 people now. Typical Tuesday morning crowd. Suits and scrubs and backpacks. Everyone absorbed in their own little worlds. The cleaner was gone. No cart, no mop, no man in navy coveralls. Just commuters sitting and standing, reading and scrolling, doing all the normal things people do on trains. But that wet spot was still there, right next to where I'd been sitting, still shining under the lights, even though there was no trace of whoever or whatever had made it. I should have just gotten off the train and forgotten about it. Chalked it up to being overtired or drinking too much coffee, or maybe some weird trick of the lighting. But I couldn't stop thinking about it all day. During lunch, I found myself Googling things like train maintenance schedules and early morning cleaning crews, trying to find some logical explanation for what I'd seen. Maybe there was a standard protocol I wasn't aware of. Maybe all trains had cleaners working the morning routes, and I just never noticed before, because I was always buried in my phone. But the more I researched, the less sense it made. The Transit Authority website showed that deep cleaning happened overnight, when the trains were out of service. Light maintenance and trash collection happened during regular hours, but was quick. Crews would board at major stops, do a fast sweep, and get off. They didn't ride the trains for extended periods, methodically mopping the same small area over and over. And they definitely didn't work in complete silence. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those slow, repetitive circles. The way the mop moved without making a sound. The way other passengers walked right past like he wasn't even there. Wednesday morning, I almost drove to work instead. But curiosity got the better of me. I had to know if he'd be there again. I positioned myself in the first car this time, thinking maybe if I changed my routine completely, I could avoid whatever weird encounter I'd had the day before. The 6:15 pulled up right on schedule, and I found a seat near the front, facing backward so I could see the whole car. He wasn't there. For the first 3 stops, everything was completely normal. Regular commuters, regular sounds, regular Tuesday becoming Wednesday energy. I started to relax, telling myself it had been some kind of stress-induced hallucination. Maybe I needed to cut back on caffeine. Then at Oak Street, he got on. Not walked on, got on. Like he'd been waiting on the platform. Just another passenger. Except he was pushing that same gray cart, wearing the same navy coveralls, and the moment the doors closed, he started mopping, right next to my seat. This time I watched him more carefully, try and catch some detail I'd missed before. His movements were identical to the day before. Same slow circles, same focused attention on that 2-foot square floor. But now I noticed other things. His hands on the mop handle were pale, almost translucent under the fluorescent lights. And when he bent over slightly to adjust his grip, I caught a glimpse of his face under the baseball cap. He had no eyes, not like they'd been removed or damaged, like they'd never been there at all. Just smooth skin where his eyes should have been, and a mouth that was wrong. Too wide, too thin, like a line drawn by a child who'd never seen a real mouth before. I jerked back in my seat, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it over the train noise. But the cleaner didn't react. He just kept mopping, those eyeless sockets pointed down at the floor, completely absorbed in his work. A businessman got on at the next stop and walked directly toward us. I wanted to warn him, to shout, "Can't you see him?" But the word stuck in my throat as the man walked right through the space where the cleaner was standing. Not around him, through him. The cleaner didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the interference. The businessman didn't react either, just continued to an empty seat like nothing had happened. That's when I understood I was the only one who could see him. For the rest of the week, I took a different route to work. Bus, then subway, adding an extra 30 minutes to my commute. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't face that train again. Not yet. But Friday afternoon, I had to stay late to fix a server issue, and by the time I left the office, the evening rush was in full swing. The buses were packed, the subway was delayed, and I was exhausted. When I saw the red line pulling into the station, the same route as my morning train, just going the opposite direction, I didn't hesitate. Big mistake. I found a seat in the middle of the car, surrounded by other commuters heading home for the weekend. For the first few stops, everything seemed normal. Just tired office workers and retail employees. Everyone ready to decompress after a long week. Then I saw him. He was 3 rows up, working on a spot near the window. Same coveralls, same cart, same methodical mopping. But this time, something was different. The wet spot was bigger. Instead of 2 square feet, it looked like maybe 4 or 5. And it wasn't just wet, it was dark, like the moisture was tinged with something that wasn't water. I tried to look away, to focus on my phone or the view outside, but my eyes kept drifting back to him. The cleaner's movements seemed more urgent now, less methodical. The circles were faster, more erratic, and even though I still couldn't hear the mop itself, I could see the strain in his shoulders, the tension in his posture. He was working harder to clean something that was getting worse instead of better. At the next stop, a woman got on and started walking down the aisle, heading directly for the seats near the cleaner. She was young, maybe college-aged, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious. I want to call out to her, to warn her somehow, but what would I say? Don't sit there. There's an invisible janitor? She'd think I was crazy. She chose a seat right next to where he was working. The moment she sat down, the cleaner stopped. For the first time since I'd started seeing him, he lifted his head and looked at someone, looked at her with those eyeless sockets, that too wide mouth stretching into something that might have been a smile. Then he started mopping again, but now the circles included the area where her feet were resting. I watched in horror as the dark, wet spot began to spread, creeping toward her shoes. She didn't notice. How could she? She couldn't see him, but I could see everything. The way the stain seemed to reach for her, the way the cleaner's movements became more focused, more purposeful. He wasn't cleaning anymore. He was preparing. The train pulled into the next station, and I made a split-second decision. I got up, walked over to the woman, and tapped her on the shoulder. "Excuse me," I said, probably too loudly. "Would you mind if I sat there? I'm feeling a little car sick and need to be closer to the window." She looked annoyed but moved without argument, taking a seat several rows back. The moment she was gone, the cleaner stopped again. The dark spot began to shrink, fading back to that familiar wet shine I'd seen on my first encounter. He'd been targeting her specifically. I got off at the next stop, even though it meant walking 12 blocks home in the rain. I needed air, needed space, needed to think about what I just witnessed. That was 3 weeks ago, and I haven't taken the red line since. I drive to work now, even though parking costs a fortune and traffic is a nightmare. Some nights, I have dreams about that cleaner, about those eyeless sockets and that too wide mouth, about the way the wet spots seem to reach for that woman's feet. But here's the thing that really keeps me awake. I've been doing research, looking into accidents on the red line, unexplained incidents, anything that might explain what I saw. Turns out, over the past 2 years, there have been 7 cases of passengers who boarded the early morning red line and were found dead at the end of the route. Natural causes, the report said: heart attacks, strokes, sudden medical events. All of them were alone when it happened. And according to witnesses, they seemed fine when they got on the train. 7 people, all found in their seats, peaceful as if they'd just fallen asleep. No signs of struggle, no obvious cause of death. And in each case, according to police reports I managed to find, there was a small wet spot on the floor next to where they'd been sitting. Clean water, the forensics team determined, probably from a recent mopping. I don't know if the cleaner is real or if I'm losing my mind. I don't know if he's something supernatural or just my brain's way of processing some kind of trauma I don't remember having. But I know this. I saved that woman's life 3 weeks ago, even if she'll never know it. And I know that somewhere out there on the 615 red line, he's still working, still mopping that same spot, over and over, waiting for someone else to sit close enough, waiting to clean something away, something that used to be human. I just hope no one else can see him, because if you can see the cleaner, that means you're next on his list. And trust me, you don't want to know what he's really cleaning up. You know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on it? Like when you walk into a room and everyone stops talking, but instead of starting up again, they just don't? That happened to me 3 months ago on the 11:47 train home from work. Except it wasn't a room full of people who stopped talking. It was a room full of people who had never been talking at all. My name's David, I'm 34, work in IT downtown. Nothing special about me. I take the same train every night, same route, same tired commuters heading home after another soul-crushing day. I thought I knew that train like the back of my hand. I was wrong. It was one of those miserable October nights where the rain just hammers everything into submission. You know the kind, where your umbrella's useless and you're soaked before you even make it to the platform. I was running late because of some server crash at work. So by the time I got to Central Station, most of the good seats were taken. I hate crowded carriages. Always have. Something about being pressed up against strangers, hearing everyone's phone conversations, smelling their dinner, it just gets to me. So when I saw there was a quiet carriage with only a handful of people in it, I didn't even hesitate. The quiet carriage, you know, the one where you're supposed to keep noise to a minimum. Perfect for people like me who just want to zone out on the way home. I slid into a window seat about halfway down, threw my soggy jacket on the seat next to me, and pulled out my phone. The usual routine. The train lurched forward with that familiar screech of metal on metal, and we were off into the night. That's when I started to notice it. See, quiet carriages aren't actually quiet. There's always something. People shifting in their seats, clearing their throats, the rustle of newspapers, the soft tap-tap of fingers on phone screens. The ambient noise of human existence. But this carriage? Dead silent. At first, I figured people were just being extra respectful. Good for them, right? I mean, how often do you actually get a properly quiet carriage? I went back to scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the way the silence seemed to press against my eardrums. The train rocked gently as we pulled out of the industrial district. Through the rain-streaked window, I could see the blurred lights of the city giving way to suburban darkness. Standard Tuesday night commute. But the silence was getting to me. I looked up from my phone and really took in my fellow passengers for the first time. There was maybe 6 or 7 of them scattered around the carriage. A woman in a gray business suit sitting across the aisle from me, briefcase at her feet, an older guy in a worn leather jacket near the front, a young woman with short blonde hair a few rows back. Normal people, regular commuters. They were all perfectly still. I don't mean still like they were sleeping or lost in thought. I mean still like mannequins. The woman across from me hadn't moved a muscle since I'd sat down. Not to check her phone, not to adjust her position, not even to blink. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she was staring straight ahead with this blank expression. I watched her for maybe 30 seconds, timing on my phone. She didn't blink once. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with my wet clothes. I shifted my attention to the older guy near the front. Same thing, completely motionless, staring at some fixed point ahead of him. The blonde woman in the back, same deal. They were all facing the same direction, all with that same vacant stare. The train hit a rough patch of track and jolted violently to one side. I grabbed the armrest to steady myself. My jacket slid to the floor with a wet thud. None of them moved, not even a millimeter. My heart started doing this weird flutter thing in my chest. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe they were all just tired, zoned out after a long day. We've all been there, right? Sometimes you just go on autopilot on the commute home. But this felt different. Wrong. I cleared my throat, loudly. The kind of throat clearing that's impossible to ignore in a quiet space. Nothing. No acknowledgement. No annoyed glances. No reaction at all. "Excuse me," I said to the woman across the aisle. My voice sounded too loud in the silence, almost obscene. "Excuse me, miss." She didn't respond, didn't even twitch, just kept staring ahead with those glassy, unblinking eyes. I leaned forward, waved my hand in front of her face. "Hey, are you okay?" Nothing. It was like I wasn't even there. The train was picking up speed now, the lights outside becoming streaks in the darkness. The rhythm of the wheels on the track should have been soothing, but instead it felt ominous, like a countdown. I stood up, legs shaky, and walked over to the older man near the front. Sir, are you feeling all right?" He was staring at the emergency exit door at the front of the carriage. I followed his gaze, but there was nothing there, just the standard emergency exit with its red handle and safety instructions. That's when I realized they were all staring at the same thing. Every single person in that carriage was looking at that emergency exit door with the same blank, focused intensity. I waved my hand in front of the man's face, snapped my fingers next to his ear. Nothing. His skin had this weird waxy quality to it, like he hadn't moved in hours. Days, maybe. What the hell? I muttered, backing away from him. I looked around the carriage again. Really looked this time. The woman across from my seat, the blonde woman in the back, a teenager with headphones I hadn't noticed before. They were all perfectly still, all staring at that door. Their eyes didn't track my movement as I walked up and down the aisle. They didn't acknowledge my presence at all. It was like being in a carriage full of dolls. The train took a sharp curve, and I had to grab onto a seat to keep from falling. The motion should have caused everyone to sway, to shift their weight, to react instinctively. They remained perfectly upright, perfectly still. That's when the real fear kicked in. Not the gradual unease I've been feeling, but pure animal terror. Something was very, very wrong here, and I needed to get out. Now, I stumbled back to my seat, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door to the next carriage. My hands were shaking as I pressed the button to open it. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss, and suddenly I was hit with a wall of normal human noise. Conversation, laughter, the rustle of newspapers, someone eating crisps, a baby crying. Beautiful, chaotic, living sound. I practically fell into the next carriage, gasping like I'd been holding my breath. A few people looked up at me with mild curiosity, probably wondering why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I found an empty seat and collapsed into it, my heart hammering against my ribs. The normal sounds of human life washed over me like a warm bath. Two women discussing their weekend plans. A man arguing with someone on his phone. A group of teenagers laughing at something on social media. Real people. Living, breathing, moving people. I pulled out my phone to call. Who? The police? What was I going to tell them? Officer, there's some very quiet people on the train who won't talk to me. That's when I made the mistake of looking back. There's a window in the connecting door between carriages. Just a small rectangle of reinforced glass. So you can see if someone's coming through from the other side. Through that window, I could see into the quiet carriage. They had all turned around. Every single person in that carriage. The woman in the gray suit, the old man, the blonde woman, the teenager. People I hadn't even noticed before. They were all facing my direction now. All staring directly at me through that little window. Still perfectly silent. Still perfectly still. But now they were watching me. Their faces were completely expressionless. But somehow I knew they were aware of me. Aware that I had noticed them. Aware that I was afraid. I couldn't move. Couldn't look away. Those blank, unblinking eyes held me frozen in my seat, while my brain screamed at me to run, to pull the emergency brake, to do something, anything. The train began to slow as we approached the next station. The normal sounds of the carriage continued around me. People gathering their belongings, checking their phones, preparing to get off. Life going on as usual. But through that window, those figures remained motionless, watching me with their dead eyes. The train pulled into the station with a mechanical wheeze of brakes. People got up, moved toward the doors, filed out onto the platform. I stayed in my seat, unable to tear my gaze away from that window. As the last passengers disembarked and new ones got on, I finally found the strength to look away. I spent the rest of the journey staring at my hands, my phone, anything but that connecting window. When my stop came, I practically sprinted off a train. That was 3 months ago. I've taken the train every weeknight since then. Same time, same route. I always check the quiet carriage now. Just a quick glance through the windows as I walk past to find a seat in a normal carriage. It's usually empty these days. Completely empty. But sometimes, maybe once a week, I see them. Different people, but the same scene. A handful of passengers sitting in perfect silence. Perfectly still, all staring at that emergency exit door. I never go in there anymore. I stick to the loud carriages with the crying babies and the phone conversations and the teenagers playing music too loud. I never thought I'd be grateful for noise pollution, but here we are. The thing that really gets to me, though, the thing that keeps me awake at night, yesterday, as I was walking past a quiet carriage, I saw a familiar face, a guy from my office building, someone I'd seen in the elevator a few times. Nice guy, always said hello. He was sitting in there, completely motionless, staring at that door with those blank, glassy eyes. This morning, I saw him in the elevator. He seemed normal, chatting about the weather, complaining about his workload. But when I mentioned seeing him on the train, he looked confused. Said he'd been driving to work all week because his car was in the shop and he'd finally gotten it back. So here's what I can't stop thinking about. What if it's spreading? What if every night more people end up in that carriage? What if one day I get on the train and every single carriage is like that one? What if one day I get on the train and find myself sitting perfectly still, staring at an emergency exit door, while some other poor bastard tries desperately to get my attention? What if I'm already there and I just don't know it yet? I guess I'll find out tomorrow night. Same train, same time. I really hope I'm still in the loud carriage. You know that feeling when you wake up somewhere you don't recognize? That split second of panic before your brain catches up and remembers where you are? Well, what I'm about to tell you happened to me 3 months ago, and I still get that panic every single morning because I woke up on a train that wasn't supposed to exist at a station that had no name, and according to the transit system, I never left home at all. My name's Eddie. I'm 28, work in tech support downtown. I take the red line every day to work. Been riding it for 4 years now. I know every stop, every announcement, every weird smell in every car. Or at least, I thought I did. So this happened on a Tuesday night in November. I'd been visiting my buddy Jacob in Riverside. We were working on some side project, lost track of time like we always do. By the time I left his place, it was already past 11. The trains run later on weekdays, so I wasn't too worried, just tired as hell. I remember swiping my card at Riverside Station, hearing that familiar beep, walking down those grimy steps. The platform was mostly empty, just a few late commuters scattered around. Everyone on their phones or staring into space. Standard Tuesday night crowd. The train pulled in right on schedule. I found a seat near the back, settled in with my headphones. The car was maybe half full. A couple of office workers who'd stayed late. Some college kids heading back from wherever. Normal stuff. I wasn't planning to fall asleep. Hell, I never fall asleep on trains. Too paranoid about missing my stop. But I've been pulling 12-hour days all week. And Jake's couch is comfortable as a brick. The train's rhythm, that steady clack, clack, clack on the tracks. It just got to me, you know? I woke up to silence. Not the usual train silence. There's always something. The hum of the engine. People shifting in their seats. The screech of brakes. This was different. Complete dead silence. Like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. My neck was stiff from sleeping against the window. I blinked a few times, trying to get my bearings. The first thing I noticed was a light. It was this weird, flat fluorescent glow that made everything look washed out, not the normal warm lighting you get in the red line cars. Then I looked around, and that's when the first wave of unease hit me. The car was still half full, but nobody was moving. I mean, nobody. The guy across from me was staring straight ahead, not blinking. This woman near the door had her phone in her hand, but the screen was black. A teenager with earbuds and wasn't even nodding to music, just sitting there like a mannequin. I cleared my throat, expecting someone to look over. Nothing. I checked my phone, 12:47 a.m. I'd been out for over an hour. "Excuse me," I said to the guy across from me. "Do you know what stop this is?" He didn't even twitch. His eyes were open, but it was like looking at a doll. I waved my hand in front of his face. Still nothing. That's when I heard it, or rather, didn't hear it. Every train has this automated announcement system, right? Next stop, Central Avenue. Doors will open on the left. But as I listened, all I could hear was this low, electronic hum coming from the speakers. I looked up at the digital display above the doors. You know, the one that shows the route map with all the stations lit up. It was completely blank. Just a black screen with 2 words in green text. Next stop. My heart started doing this thing where it felt like it was beating too fast and too slow at the same time. I stood up, legs a little shaky, and walked to the window. We were moving through a tunnel, but it wasn't any tunnel I recognized. The red line has these distinctive blue and white tiles in most of the underground sections, but this tunnel was just raw concrete, stained and cracked. The emergency lighting was spaced wrong too far apart, creating these pockets of darkness between each light. I tried to remember the route. After Riverside, there's University, then Downtown, then Central, then my stop at Maple Grove. But I'd been asleep for over an hour. We should have completed the entire route twice by now. I walked to the front of the car, past all those frozen passengers. None of them reacted. The woman with the phone, I got close enough to see her screen was actually on, but it was just static. Gray and white pixels dancing silently. Through the door window, I could see into the next car. Same thing. People sitting there like statues, bathed in that sickly fluorescent light. The car after that, same deal. Like the entire train was filled with human-shaped furniture. The train started to slow down, and I felt this surge of relief. Finally, a stop. I could get off, figure out where I was, catch the next train home. The brakes made their usual sound, but longer, more drawn out like a sigh. We pulled into a station, and I pressed my face against the window to see the platform. It was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. No benches, no vending machines, no signs. Just a concrete platform stretching away into darkness on both ends. The only light came from a single fluorescent fixture hanging from the ceiling, flickering like it was about to die. But here's the thing that made my stomach drop. There were no station signs. You know how every platform has those big blue signs with a station name? Nothing. Just blank walls. The doors didn't open. I waited, thinking maybe they were delayed. Sometimes the system glitches, takes a few seconds. But after a full minute, nothing. I pressed the door button. That yellow button that's supposed to open the doors manually. Nothing. Press it again, harder. The button felt stuck, like it wasn't connected to anything. That's when I started to panic. I looked around at the other passengers, hoping someone else would react, would show some sign. They noticed we weren't moving, but they just sat there, staring at nothing. "Hey!" I shouted. "Hey! The doors aren't opening." My voice echoed weird in the car, like the sound was being absorbed by something. None of them moved. The guy I tried talking to before, I walked back to him, grabbed his shoulder, shook him. His shoulder was cold. Not just cool, cold, like he'd been sitting in a freezer. And when I let go, he didn't rock back into place like a normal person would. He just stayed exactly where I'd moved him, tilted slightly to the left. I tried the woman with the phone next. Same thing. Cold, stiff, like touching a mannequin. Her eyes were open, but when I looked closer, they weren't reflecting the light right. They were flat, matte, like painted glass. I ran to the emergency intercom. That red phone they have for contacting conductor. Picked it up, heard the dial tone, waited for someone to answer. "Hello?" A voice came through, fuzzy with static. "What's the nature of your emergency?" "The doors won't open." I said, "We're stopped at some station, but the doors aren't opening and I don't know where we are." "Can you describe your location?" the voice asked. But there was something off about it. It was too flat, too even, like text-to-speech software. "I don't know. There are no signs. The platform is empty and there are no signs anywhere. Please remain calm and stay seated," the voice said. "We'll be moving shortly." "Wait! I need to get off. I need to dash." The line went dead. The train jerked forward and we started moving again. I stumbled back to my seat, watching the empty platform slide away. As we entered the next tunnel, I caught a glimpse of something that made me freeze. On the platform, just before we disappeared into darkness, I saw a figure, just standing there, perfectly still. It was too far away to make out details, but something about its posture, the way it stood, it looked exactly like the passengers in my car. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. We stopped at 3 more stations, each one exactly the same. Empty platform, single flickering light. No signs, no people. Except for that last glimpse as we pulled away. There was always someone standing there, always perfectly still. And the doors never opened. I tried everything. I kicked the doors, tried to pry them apart with my fingers, even looked for an emergency release. Nothing worked. The windows were sealed shut, no way to break them. I was trapped in a train car with a bunch of human mannequins, traveling to nowhere. The worst part was the announcements. Every few minutes, that electronic hum from the speakers would change pitch slightly, like it was trying to form words, but couldn't quite manage it. And that display kept showing the same message. Next stop. I started timing it. Every stop was exactly 7 minutes apart. 7 minutes of tunnel, then a station that didn't exist, then 7 more minutes. Like clockwork. Around the fourth station, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The guy across from me, the one I'd shaken earlier, he was sitting up straighter. Not much, just barely noticeable. But I was sure he'd been slumped forward when I first saw him. I watched him for the next few stops. Each time we pulled into a station, he sat up a little more. By the 7th stop, his back was perfectly straight, and his head was turned slightly toward me. The woman with the phone had moved too. Her arm was extended now, like she was offering the phone to someone. The screen was still showing that static, but the pixels were moving in patterns now, almost like they were trying to form shapes. I don't know how long it went on. The stations all blurred together, and I lost count after 20. My phone had died somewhere around stop 15, so I had no idea what time it was. But then, somewhere deep in what felt like the 100th tunnel, I saw a light ahead. Not the harsh fluorescent light of those empty stations, warm yellow light. Real light. As we approached, I could make out the familiar blue and white tiles. A real platform with real benches, real signs, and people, actual moving people waiting for trains. The display above the doors flickered, and suddenly it showed the full route map. All the stations lit up in their proper order, and there, highlighted in green, downtown next stop. Downtown. I knew downtown station. I could get off there, catch a bus, get home somehow. The train slowed down, and for the first time in hours, I heard the normal announcement. Next stop, downtown station. Doors will open on the right. The doors opened. I didn't hesitate. I bolted off that train like my life depended on it, pushing past the people trying to board. I heard someone yell behind me, but I didn't stop running until I was up the stairs, out of the station, standing on the sidewalk under the streetlights. Downtown looked normal. Cars driving by, a few late-night pedestrians, the 24-hour diner still glowing with neon light. I checked the station clock, 2:15 a.m. I'd been on that train for over 3 hours. I caught a bus home. Couldn't sleep, called in sick to work the next day. Spent the entire day online, looking up red line schedules, station maps, anything I could find. According to every official source, the red line has exactly 12 stations. I knew all 12 by heart. There were no unnamed stations, no gaps in the route where extra stops could exist. I called the transit authority, talked to customer service. The woman I spoke to was polite, but confused. Sir, our trains don't run empty stations. Every station on the red line is marked and functional. But what if someone got on the wrong train, like a maintenance train or something? Maintenance trains don't carry passengers, and they don't run on passenger schedules. If you fell asleep and missed your stop, the train would just continue to the end of the line and turn around. I asked about the loop I'd experienced, the repeating stations. She checked the schedule, confirmed that no train runs in a loop like that. They all have start and end points. Finally, I asked her to check my transit card records. Can you see my trips from yesterday? I got on at Riverside around 11:30 p.m. There was a pause. Sir, I'm showing your last recorded trip was Monday evening. Your card hasn't been used since then. That's impossible. I definitely swiped in at Riverside. I'm looking at the system logs. No swipe at Riverside Station on Tuesday night. No swipe anywhere. According to the transit system, I'd never left home. That was 3 months ago. I still take the red line to work every day. I have to. It's the only practical way to get downtown. But I don't sleep on trains anymore. I don't even close my eyes. I've tried to find rational explanations. Maybe I had some kind of breakdown, a fugue state. Maybe I never got on the train at all, just wandered around downtown for 3 hours in some kind of dissociative episode. But I can't explain my transit card. I checked it obsessively for weeks after. The system showed no activity that night, but somehow I got from Riverside to downtown. The distance between those stations is 12 miles. I didn't walk it. I've talked to other regular commuters, asked if anyone's experienced anything similar. Most think I'm crazy, but a few have mentioned strange things. Trains that feel off late at night. Passengers who don't seem quite right. Stations that look different in the tunnels between stops. One guy told me about a time his train stopped in the tunnel for 20 minutes with no explanation. When it finally started moving again, he swore they passed a platform that wasn't there the next day. But the worst part is the dreams. I dream about that train now, almost every night. Same fluorescent lighting, same silent passengers. But in the dreams, I'm one of them. I'm sitting perfectly still, phone in my hand showing static, while some other poor bastard tries to shake me awake. And sometimes when I'm on the regular red line during the day, I catch glimpses of things that shouldn't be there. In the split second between stations, when we're deep in the tunnels and the lights flicker, I swear I see those empty platforms sliding past the windows. Just last week, I was on my normal morning commute when the train stopped between downtown and Central. The conductor announced a signal delay. Said we'd be moving in a few minutes. But while we sat there in the dark, I looked at the passenger across from me, middle-aged woman, reading a paperback novel. For just a moment, when the lights flickered, her hands were empty and her eyes were staring straight ahead. Just for a moment, the lights came back. She was reading again and we started moving. But I know what I saw. I think that other train is still out there, somewhere in the spaces between stations, running its loop through places that don't exist, collecting passengers who fall asleep at the wrong time. And I think one day when I'm tired enough, when my guard is down enough, I'm gonna wake up there again. Only next time, I don't think I'll be the one trying to get off. I think I'll be one of the passengers, sitting perfectly still, while someone else shakes my cold shoulder and begs me to respond. The thing is, I'm not sure that wouldn't be a relief, because at least then, I'd finally know where I belong.